All right, so that is what oral narratives are. But why are they so important to the Native American community? In order to fully explore that question, I'll have to go back into the recent Native American history. This will include the 1950s termination period, the 1960s fight for independence, and then the 19 more current day debate over sovereignty and tribal independence. So, we have all mostly heard about what happened during the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s to the Native American community. There were devastating amounts of disease, relocation, genocide, slavery. It was awful. And all of that did not necessarily stop when we hit the 1900s, even though often you don't think about it. And an excellent example of this is the 1950s, which is generally thought of in Native American history as the termination period. This term comes about from Dwight Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, who instituted 6 bills which were intended to end formal relations between the United States government and the Native American peoples. The United States government really thought that, well, the tribes, they're taking up land, they're taking up resources, nothing we do seems to help, we're simply fostering their dependence upon the government. We should just end the federal government relations with the Native American tribes and simply leave them to the state's mercy. Now, this was a highly debated proposition, especially because the states tended not to have good relations with the Native American tribes. The states saw the Native American lands as their lands that they could use. They saw everything that was going on with those tribes often as detrimental to the states. Thus, when the termination bills passed, many of the states took Native American reservations and lands. They took property of the American Indian community, and as a result, mass confusion ensued and really huge amounts of loss to the American Indian community. Related to these bills was another movement during the 1950s, which sought to move American Indians off of reservations and into the cities. It was thought, well, one of the easiest ways to terminate relations with the tribes is if there really aren't any more tribes. And to do that, you just move them off the reservations, you move them out of their tribes, and you move them into urban centers, and you get them jobs, and this will increase the education of the Native American children, and it'll have all these great side effects. But it didn't. When the Native Americans were moved into cities, they were told that they would have jobs, they would have education opportunities, that everything would look better when they got there. But it really didn't. There were some job training courses available, there was some help finding housing, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. And many Native Americans ended up jobless, homeless, and on the train back to the reservation, more discouraged than when they left. Many Native Americans did stay in the cities, and for some, the children's literacy levels did go up, and there were some positive side effects. But psychologically, the side effects were very scarring as the cities were crowded, they were noisy, they were very individualized and chaotic. And the urban shift was really incredibly difficult as city life was impersonal, and those who moved to the cities felt like they had lost the family and tribal ties that they had had all of their lives, and this was extremely difficult to lose. This was obviously a non-beneficial thing to do to the American Indian community. It was designed for the benefit of the government, and in short, it was designed for the Americanization of the American Indians. It was designed to make them Americans, to make them Western, to remove that culture, remove what was different about them, and replace it with the Western American mindset and mentality. During the 1960s, the American Indian community fought back against these movements. Now, you still had a continued move toward the urban environment and towards cities, but there was a great stress on regaining rights to land, because there is really a very deep tie between Native American communities and identity and land. This can very much be seen through oral narratives, in which you have very detailed descriptions of the Columbia River or the Rocky Mountains or the deserts, and you can just hear it through all of the stories, the emotional tie between land and Native American identity. Thus, regaining land was a great part of this movement during the 1960s and 70s. Also a part of it was revaluing the oral narrative tradition as maintaining the traditions of this community and keeping the meaning of having a community. Thus, the 1960s and 70s were really filled with fighting back against the Americanization of Native Americans. In the law aspect of this, one of the greatest fights actually took place over the children of American Indians. During 1969 to 1974, 25 to 35% of all Native American children were placed in foster care or up for adoption or not in their own parents' or guardians' homes. Of those 25 to 35% of all Native American children, 85% were placed in non-Native American homes. This meant that 85% of those children who were up for adoption or in foster care were in homes in which they did not grow up with the traditions that had been earlier instilled in them. They did not grow up with the same stories and values that had been in place within the American Indian community for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And during the 1970s, this was very much resisted by the Native American community. They said, these are our children. They should be in our homes. Even if they can't be in the homes of their parents, they should, precedence should be placed, a priority should be placed on those who are willing to take them, who are Native American, and will instill in them those values, those traditions, and will show them the importance of their community and identity. So, a act was placed during the 1970s called the Indian Child Welfare Act, and this helped a great deal. Even though the situation is still not perfect today, more Native American children are placed in Native American homes, and that is definitely beneficial. Other acts which were passed during the 1970s included the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act of 1975 and the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978. And those three acts together really helped the American Indian self-determination spirit, as they said that we are independent and we are a self-contained community, and the law began to back them up more so. During the present day, things still aren't perfect. There is a higher rate of depression, suicide, diabetes, alcoholism in the Native American community. And that is something that indicates the side effects of what has happened before, of the past 50 years and of the past 300 years. That community is still suffering the side effects of wrongful actions. And as a result, it's a very splintered community, one in which you have a higher percentage now living in cities than living on reservations, and who are, in a larger percentage, who are feeling disconnected from their roots, from their community, from their identities. And as a result, they need something that will bond them together as a community with a communal identity. And that is what we'll be talking about next time, is how oral narratives help bond the Native American community together.